Y'all ready for it?
We're ready.
Y'all know what's coming next. So there was a young pastor, fresh out of Bible college, super excited about his brand new church. And his first invitation is to go and do a devotion at the local prison. So he goes, he's excited, but he's nervous also. He goes in, the crowd comes up, they're really excited to hear him speak. He gets up behind the little podium and he says, "Good morning, everybody. Glad to see you here."
That was not good.
Well, I told y'all before this episode started that you were going to miss it. He was at a prison.
Yeah.
And he said, "Glad to see you here."
Yeah. Got it and we missed it all.
Pull it back down, okay, because it's kind of going over here.
He was at the prison.
Yeah.
And he said, "Glad to see you here."
Okay.
She's still don't get it.
The good part of
better if it had been a funeral.
the best part of this joke is that she is having so much fun
that she thinks
explaining
it's
it.
Explaining it to us.
Yeah. Okay. Y'all didn't
Welcome
get it.
everybody.
All right, so are you gonna open? Go ahead.
Thank you for joining us today. Glad to have you on the Hope for the Soul podcast. Our jokester today on the Kayla cam was Sister Kayla. We've got young Pastor Trent with us. I'm here and you're here, and then we're delighted to have a good friend and our family member who's in town for a wedding, the Bishop, Ken Burgess. Brother Burgess is a career missionary who has served all over the globe, and he's a neat guy. We love spending time with him. We don't really like him, but we love him. And so we're so happy that he is with us. So we're going to spend a little time visiting with him, but take a minute and like and subscribe. Tell somebody about us. Share this if you're watching it. And you make our journey on Hope for the Soul so much better. And just tell somebody about us. I'm happy to have you today, Brother Burgess.
It didn't sound like it, but thank you.
This is going to be so fun.
We are a family here today. Okay, you married my sister, I don't know, 40 or 50 years ago, and y'all are still together, so congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So welcome to Hope for the Soul today. I invited you on because I thought it would be neat if we could just have you share a little bit about who is Ken Burgess, where has Ken Burgess been, and does Brother Burgess have any idea where he's going?
Well, those are good questions. Who am I? Fourth generation Pentecostal on both sides of the family. Been raised in this my whole life. I've had a love for mission since I was a little boy, and always dreamed of someday being a missionary. When we graduated from Bible school a long time ago, we were offered the opportunity to serve on AIM in the nation of Paraguay. This was back in 1989, and we sold everything we had to go and work there, and apparently everything worked out all right, because here we are almost 35 years later, still doing it. And that's who I am. I'm more than anything, I'm a missionary. What I'm doing right now is living in the nation of Spain. I pastor the Central Church in Madrid, and also serve as the district superintendent over District 1. Our country's divided into 3 districts. And that's what I'm doing now. What I'm going to do in the future, I hope is the same thing that I'm doing today with the help of the Lord. That's our desire. So that's me.
All right, so Paraguay. I heard that you were in Paraguay. I listened to another podcast you were on with Nathan Harrod last night. So I didn't realize you were in Paraguay until I listened to that episode. So how long were you there? What did your role look like there?
We went to Paraguay. The work was brand new. I think there may have been, it's hard to remember, maybe 10, 15 churches in the entire country. They didn't have a Bible school. I was fresh out of Bible school, so I had all the notes, and I helped them.
That's okay.
I told y'all it was going to go great with today's episode.
Well, just a minute. I was there during those days, and I remember your relationships and the way things were for you at Bible college.
We don't need to be talking about all
I
that.
know. It's all under the blood. But you did bring the notes from your Bible school
Well,
days.
when you cram 3 years into 5, you have a lot of notes. And so I was well qualified to start a Bible school. And they needed someone that knew the beginnings of a Bible school. And since I had gone to my freshman year twice, I had all the notes.
So you were able then to expand the limits of the program at Texas Bible College.
I did. It was almost like a satellite school, but
That was
unauthorized.
I remember the incredible days we had, and then so you bring all of this experience and knowledge and curriculum, and you begin another Bible school to duplicate yourself.
No, that really wasn't the idea. It was to build young men. I didn't really want them to duplicate myself.
Oh, okay.
That would have been a lot of difficulty.
Would have been a lot of fun.
So maybe I was just wondering whether a series of baby Burgesses launched into the ministry during that season.
I have encountered a few. Yes, sir.
That's awesome.
I've had to discipline more than one.
You've had to discipline yourself.
I've had to kick a few of them out. Yeah.
So you were in Paraguay for how long?
We were on AIM for 27 months, so we were in Paraguay for 18 months.
Okay. So you were on AIM in Paraguay, and then from there, that's when you guys went to Argentina.
Yes, sir.
As missionaries.
As
aimers.
I did 9 months of AIM in Argentina, and we were in the process of filling out the application and meeting the board from Argentina, but it started in Paraguay.
So as an aimer, you launched a Bible school in Paraguay with the help of other missionaries.
Well, the brother Joseph Burr was the leader, my supervisor, and I helped him launch the Bible school. I'm the co-founder.
Co-founder.
Yes, sir.
That's great. So then you went to Argentina. You and Kay went to Argentina, and y'all spent a long time there.
We spent the 9 months on AIM, and then we came home, met the board. We were approved to Argentina, and then we went back and spent from 91 until 2010.
Wow. Okay. So there was, I'm sure, a lot of highs and a lot of lows in Argentina. If you can recap Argentina for us, what was that? What was your vision? More important than your vision, what was your mission and your burden for Argentina?
Well, Argentina is unique to me because that's the nation I was raised in as a teenager. So I fell in love with Argentina back when I was a kid, and always dreamed of going back, and always dreamed of being involved in the revival. And so when I was appointed, my first day on the board, I was by far the baby on the national board. So we had to learn and grow. To be honest with you, they didn't see me as Brother Burgess. I was Brother Burgess's son. Mm-hmm. And so I had to earn my stripes, as you say, to show that we were willing to work. Kay and I, we did the conferences. We planned everything. We made sure that the programs were sent and the bathrooms were cleaned. Everything that was involved in that was our first job besides running the Bible school. Mm-hmm. I was given the Bible school even in my term in AIM. I was given the directorship of the Bible school, and I was the director of the Bible school from then all the way until I believe it was 2008 that I turned the school over to Brother Sponsler.
Wow.
And in charge of all of that, and plus all the whatever job that they needed me to do, and just worked our way up. And we were elected president of the work in 2003.
You were elected president of the UPCI of the whole nation.
Yes,
wow.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Cool. Dad, do you have anything you want to add? I know you made some trips to Argentina.
Well, I was privileged to go a couple of times. I saw you in action in the district office. I saw you in action in conferences. I spoke in a class or so at the Bible College, and it was an intriguing thing to me to watch you in what had become your element. And there in that environment, I've traveled to other countries with you as well to see you operating, because you are Ken Burgess and a brother-in-law to me, but there you were operating in an anointing and an authority that was incredible. And then to have watched, and then one of the things that was the most intriguing to me was at one of those meetings that I did, whether it was the one in Rosario or the one in Santa Fe, one of those trips down, to watch the group of young men who had grown up under your influence, how that they had your back, and you had poured into them and believed into them, and then to see their response toward you was incredible. You have the prophets without honor in his own country, and your family and those of us that are close to you, we might pick a little bit, but there was great honor bestowed upon you by those men.
Yes, sir. Which is why I enjoy being on the field more than I do hanging out with y'all.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to have you at the airport in 30 minutes, so we need to.
That's good.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit of your concepts of leadership and mentoring that you developed, or what was your tools?
Well, to me, we put a lot of emphasis on revival, and we talk a lot about revival, and rightly so. We want the church to grow, but Jesus was our greatest example. He spent great part of his ministry discipling the disciples, the 12 men. And even in the 12, he spent even more time with 3 of them. And so he provides to us a pattern of if you're wanting to reach the world, you've got to reach men. And it's not, I've found in my ministry that I enjoy mentoring. I enjoy watching them grow. I enjoy turning them loose and seeing what they can do. And yeah, there are disappointments. There's not all of them have success, and not all of them pan out. But the vast majority of them will surprise you, and they want to work. And I felt like I remember when I was a young man and just saying, hey, give me an opportunity. Let me do something. And thankfully I had elders in my life that were willing to take a chance on me and give me that opportunity. And so I've devoted my great part of my ministry is just doing that. I've been involved in Bible schools on 3 different continents and directing Bible schools. I'm no longer the director of the Bible school in Spain. I've turned that over to a younger man, but I'm still involved in it. And it's been a passion of mine to see them grow and to plant churches. So one person can only do so much, but if you do what Paul said to Timothy, you multiply yourself into others, well, then those men go on. And some of the young boys that were in Bible school in Argentina years ago are national leaders.
They're leading it now.
And they're front and center, and it's amazing. I've watched one obviously from afar now that I'm in Spain, but I remember when he came to school, and for a little while I kind of wondered if the kid was mute, because he never said anything. He was one of the most timid young men that I'd ever met, and I worried about him just because he would never speak. And my homiletics class, they they have to speak to get a grade, and it was terrible. And I don't think he had ever stood up in front of anybody before. So I was there for the beginning, and it was a train wreck. There was just nothing. You're worried about him. Can he make it? Today, he's a district superintendent. He pastors the largest church in his district. He speaks internationally, and you watch that, and you're like, wow. I've had the privilege of watching his growth from the very beginning, and that, to me, that's the fulfilling part of planting and watching and grooming and mentoring, and that's my passion. I enjoy watching that. I enjoy doing that.
You just said that Jesus' pattern to reach the world, and it's so true, is to reach young men and young women and disciple them.
To train, yes.
So we talked about this a little bit with Alex last week. We had a Q&A on Hope for the Soul, and a portion of our conversation was it's hard sometimes for young leaders to let go and trust other leaders, whether they be their age or just people that work underneath them. So just to piggyback on that conversation we had, what's some practical things that you have done and still do with ministers that you're training who might not be able to do what you're asking them to do as good as you do it, but how do you still empower them, even though that they might not operate and get the job done like you would? How do you have patience with them?
Well, to answer that honestly, I have to go back to the beginning of my ministry.
Yeah.
And in the beginning of my ministry, I had the honor, if you want to call it that, of serving as assistant to a very well-known pastor that in a large church. And when I went on staff there, a lot of my contemporaries were envious of me, of the position and being there. And I walked into it with a great anticipation. This was one of the greatest preachers of that time, and very well known. And I'm thinking I'm going to learn so much from him, and he's going to help me become a better preacher, and I can learn leadership. And so my expectations going in were extremely high. Unfortunately, none of that happened. And the whole time I was there, there was never a conversation of anything. In reality, I did my job, and apparently I did it well because I was never reprimanded. I was never corrected. I preached several times when he would be in the congregation. Never one time did he say good job. Never one time did he say bad job. Never one time did he say, you could have, if you would have taken your introduction and used it as at the conclusion, you would have had more success. Nothing. No critiques. No encouragement. And it became very frustrating to me because in the time that I was there, which granted was not a long time, but I never knew where I stood. I never knew if I was, in his mind, if I was progressing or if never knew. I realized that I needed to know, good, bad, or ugly, tell me something. And it never happened. And so I purposed in my heart then that if I'm ever a leader and I have young people under me, be it in a Bible school scenario or as a pastor or as a national leader, there will never be a question in their minds what I think. Now, that's not always a positive thing because sometimes they don't like it when you share with them, but yet they know. And I've had several of them come through the years and say, thank you for investing in me. Thank you for taking the time to critique or to help or to correct. And I found, in fact, I make it a point now as on a weekly basis, I have a group of men, young ministers that I have on my iPad that I make it a point I pick 3 of them a week, and I write them a little note of encouragement, just to let them know, hey, you've got this, you can do this. Because that was not given to me at the time when I needed it the most. And to me, that's one of the critical things is, yeah, they're going to make mistakes. They don't always do what you tell them to do. They're going to fail. But didn't we all?
Yeah, that's great.
You know, didn't we all have a second chance, a third chance? We made mistakes. Looking back, we all did. And to let them know that that's okay. It's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to be afraid. I have a lot of them talk to me. So, you know, and when I stand in the pulpit, I'm fearful. I'm afraid. And I say, well, that's okay because it's not your pulpit. You know that this is God's work, and those are God's people,
yeah.
And you're the voice of God. You're the messenger right there. You're not supposed to be real comfortable with that. You're supposed to be conscious of what you're doing, and let them know that it's okay to think outside the box. It's okay to go forward. And the beautiful part is most of them will surprise you. They want to be successful. They want to grow. They want to be men, women of God, and I love it. I enjoy challenging them. So that's been my philosophy.
So you've taken a lot from what you learned as a young minister and applied that, but then you've taken what you didn't learn, kind of I'm never going to do this philosophy.
You're always
as well.
learning. Sometimes you're learning how to do something,
How
and
not.
sometimes you're learning this is not what you're supposed to do. But everybody teaches you something.
That's right. That's good.
So you spent 20 years of your life invested into Argentina,
Yes, sir.
Buenos Aires. The men and I guess the young ladies that were in that Bible school, you invested 20 years, and then God began to move you. He began to, the feathers came out of the nest, and he began to move. Tell us, share with us that experience and how that you perceive
Of leaving
God
Argentina.
moves you from one field to the next.
That is
We'll leave names out so we
Right.
don't, we don't incriminate anybody.
That was the most difficult decision that I've ever made. Argentina was my first love. That's where my wife learned how to speak Spanish and work, and that's where my son. If you know Cameron and if you know Argentina, Cameron's a gaucho. That's a lot of his mannerisms, a lot of the way he acts. It's Argentine. People that don't know the country, they don't see that. But when us living there, and it became part of, it was part of who we were, and the Lord began to deal with me. And I was the president of the work. Life was good, to be honest with you. Life was very good. The work was growing. In 7 years, we had doubled in our constituency. We had tripled our finances. We were growing an average of 2 brand new churches a month.
Wow.
On a national level. We were having revival, and everything was fantastic. And the Lord started dealing with me, and it was a very, very difficult. I'd like to tell you that He spoke to me one day, and I responded the next, but it didn't work that way. And it actually took a little over 2 years for me to reconcile and say, okay, I don't want to do this. I mean, when you've worked in leadership and you've invested in something and you've given it your best, and now you're seeing the fruit, you're seeing the success, to walk away from that, that's not easy, and it was difficult.
So you were having an evangelist Philip moment. You were in Samaria having revival. in Buenos Aires, Argentina, revival was happening. You were great. You were happy. And God picked you up. And where he planted Philip into the desert, he planted you into El Salvador.
Yes, sir. And years ago, and it goes back, I can't even remember. Cameron was a baby, so 30 years ago. I was on deputation, and I received a call from a district official and asked me if I would take the pastorate of a very nice opportunity here in the United States. Young, we're a young couple, and it was very, it would have been a good pay raise, just put it that way. And I asked him if he would give me a couple of days to pray about it. And he said that they would. And I'll never forget in prayer, as the Lord began to deal with me, and he asked me a question. And the question was, if you leave Argentina today, can you look them in the eye and tell them that you've given them your best? And the answer was no. I haven't given my best. I've worked as hard as I could, and we've had success, but I haven't hit my best yet. And it was like, well, that's your answer. You can't leave until you tell that you can say you've given your best. And I declined the offer, and we continued. Years passed. I forgot about it. Became the president. We're having revival. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary as a church. I've got Bishop Haney there preaching. The place is rocking. 10,000 people in the building. It's the largest event we've ever had in our history. Things are great. Kay is directing the 100-voice mass choir. They're singing. I mean, the place is just going nuts. Having the time of my life. And God spoke. And he said, now you can tell them you've given them your best. And when he said that, I knew. It was like I went from rejoicing to weeping. And I think the people thought that I was weeping in joy, but it wasn't. It was at that moment that I knew the message. I understood what he was saying, and it began the process of again. I'm hard-headed, and it took a long time for me to just say, okay, I'm going to pull my name, and I didn't tell anybody in Argentina until the moment. It was unexpected for everybody, but looking back, it was the thing to do. At the moment that I resigned, there was no El Salvador. There was no plan B.
Wow.
There was no net. And I didn't know what God was going to do. And that was, again, that was the most difficult decision in ministry that I've ever had to make. But I knew it was right. And my Brother Howell, talking to Brother Howell and my leaders, they were with me, and that it was the right moment, but no idea what was going to happen next. El Salvador came later, and we had about 3 months of limbo. We were called about some churches. I was called about a Bible school position, things like that, but nothing seemed to fit until Brother Hopkins called us about El Salvador, and totally unexpected as far as I never dreamed that I'd end up there, but that's how it happened.
So the next season was very different than the previous season.
Totally.
Because you had risen to be the leader. Now you were not the leader in this new season, but yet there seemed to be a specific purpose that God put you in El Salvador for those few years, and the fruit of that is still there.
Very much.
So
yes,
what does that look like?
Well, El Salvador had gone through several transitions with Brother Hal leaving, Brother Sladen leaving, and they ultimately ended up not having a missionary. And unfortunately, that over a period of time, that affected the Bible school. Mm-hmm. The Bible school began to decline. And so when I was contacted about going, that was the main purpose. You love Bible school, you love training. Here's an opportunity. It's one of the largest works, Hispanic works in the world. What's not to love? I went there and visited and looked at it. The potential was tremendous. And so we accepted, and I met with the national board. It's a nationalized work. I met with them. They invited us to come. So we got there, and things immediately began to happen as far as the Lord showing favor that this was what we were there for. Excuse me. And shortly after we got there, we were able to buy property. The Bible school at the time was on the side of a volcano. It was up at the edge of town. It was difficult to get to. There was no room.
Kayla, Trent, y'all saw that deal.
Yeah.
On that trip, y'all saw that.
Yeah.
And it was difficult to get to. There was no future there as far as growth. It was difficult. And so we were able to buy the property downtown, a historic building. You all saw that, and start the process. And that was, the saying, ignorance is bliss. I was very happy, and I was very ignorant. There was no idea what was in store. And so I lived, we were there for 5 years, and I was in a 5-year building program. That the first year was no shovels. It was all paperwork and government, that kind of thing. And the last 4 years was actually construction.
So remind me, it seems like that you purchased a series of houses, or what might be considered
there was 3 abandoned
mansions?
Houses.
Okay.
Yeah, they were
Big houses.
They were big
Yes.
houses. It was actually
Like a condo
a
style.
quarter of a block square, and they had been abandoned for over 15 years. They had totally been stripped of everything. There was basically the only thing that was salvageable was the roof and the walls.
Okay.
There was not even doors in some of the areas, and so we bought potential. That's what we bought. It was a trash pit, but
Yeah, I remember walking through that thinking, thank you, Jesus, this isn't me.
Well, we were actually there the day that you were handed the keys.
Yeah.
We were there when
Yeah.
they handed the
That's right.
keys.
Yeah.
yes, sir. So you saw it at its finest.
Yes.
With the
Yeah.
rats and the trash and all of that. Yes, sir.
Like homeless people had been living there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And so that turned into a Bible school. You
That is-
blended the 3 properties
Yes, sir.
together.
That's the Bible school and the national office.
So there were houses with common walls.
Yes, sir.
And you begin to knock out some of those common walls to make them one huge place. And how many students could that accommodate at that time?
Well, right now, when I took over the Department of Education, which includes the Central Bible School in San Salvador and the satellite schools, I sat down with the leadership, and we came to the conclusion that there were 43 students in the entire educational system. We're talking a country the size of El Salvador. There were 43 students. And we began to work, and so it was like I had 2 jobs. One was curriculum development, and then the other one was the construction, and then building. I guess you could actually say 3 jobs, and was promoting in the Bible schools and the training. And so we went. There was the main school, and then I believe there were 3 others, that satellite schools, and with a combined attendance of 43. So we weren't in a good shape then. And when I turned the school over, the Department of Education over, we had over 350 students
Wow.
Wow.
in the system.
That's
And
in
so-
5 years?
In 5 years. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And the last I heard, there are over 600 students
Incredible.
in the department.
So
Wow.
this school, the physical plant was there. Was it debt free when you moved in? Did you have to borrow? What was the status of that?
We were blessed. We the church in Woodlawn,
Carnage, yeah.
in Mississippi, the brother and sister Carney helped us, and they were the instrumental in purchasing the property. And but the whole total project, looking back, was well over $650,000.
And El Salvador.
And in El Salvador. And the day that it was dedicated, it was debt free.
Wow.
Wow.
And I've been asked a lot of times how that happened. And if I knew, I'd write a book about it. But I don't know. There were many, many times that I would wake up on a Monday morning and look at the finances and know I didn't have enough to make payroll on Friday.
Wow.
And
So God
somewhere during the week, it would come in.
God had picked you up out of one harvest, set you into a new place for a short season,
Yes, sir.
but it wasn't a permanent thing. So again, this process of being picked up, moved.
I think, looking back at it, we knew going to El Salvador that it wasn't a lifetime change.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got there and I saw the need in the Bible school and all the situation that was there, the national work was in great shape, great national leadership, worked very well with them, had a great time. But the Bible school was suffering, and that just happened to be, my area of passion, and so we stepped in and were able to work. Once that finished, once the school was built, and once the program was up and running, and once the curriculum had been rewritten and everything was in place, I knew that I was done.
There's a what's next. What's next.
What's the next challenge? And when we left on deputation in the end of 2014, I knew in my heart, it wasn't something that we said vocally, but I just knew in my spirit that we weren't going back. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I just felt like I had accomplished the task that God had given us for that moment, and we were finished. And
I find this conversation extremely intriguing because in my own life, God put me here at a young age, and he decided to leave me here. Or maybe he had me in a place where he didn't have to worry about me, and nobody else was worrying about me either, But I've been here forever and am attached to this ministry for a lifetime. I've never had him pick me up and move me to the next challenge in that manner. So he picked you up, and this time he translated you not to another American continent, but across the Atlantic.
yes, sir.
Hey, can I ask a question? I want to go back and ask a practical question, and then follow that up with a spiritual question. Part one of the question is: you moved from Buenos Aires, which is like Paris of South America. It's very European. It's not third world. Very blessed. And you moved to one of the poorest cities in Central America, third world country. So like practically, like that wasn't easy for you. That was probably easier, but for Aunt Kay, that was probably just the girl side over. That's not an easy transition. Now, obviously, she's bought into the mission spiritually. She's following you. You're following God, and that's easy. But maybe so. Talk about the practicality of, like, we stayed in your house, which is beautiful, and it was awesome, but it was still San Salvador.
Yes, sir.
So talk a little bit about that, and then maybe can you piggyback that on why it's important that when God moves you, you say yes, even if it's not, in our eyes, we want to go to the next big thing. You went from a big thing to a small thing. Talk a little bit about that.
You used the word practical. Bottom line is, it was not practical. There was nothing practical about it, and that's why when I say it was the most difficult moment and up to now in my ministry, there's not even a close second, because nothing made sense. Nothing. We loved Argentina. We still love Argentina. That will always be a special place in our heart. And never dreamed that I would ever leave. I felt with Argentina like you feel with Conroe, that this is where God put us. And as a kid, growing up, Argentina is a cool country. And we were extremely happy. And like I said, there was no problems. There were no letter writing. I mean, we're having revival. We're doing well. And it was just the Lord began to deal with me. And I tell you how it happened. It was kind of, I told you about what happened to me at the convention. Well, I'm trying to forget that. I just thought, well, that was just an emotional moment. That'll pass. Well, it didn't. And we went on deputation, and as we're traveling, I remember one day in prayer, I thought I was praying for the service that night, but in prayer, I remember the Lord, the Holy Spirit asked me a question, and the question was, "Do you trust me?"
Wow.
Just that little voice. "Do you trust me?" And I said yes, and I tried to keep on praying. But when I answered yes, it was like the spirit of prayer left. I couldn't pray anymore. So I thought, well, that's a little strange, but, again, I'm hard-headed. So the next day, praying again, same thing happened. I would get to a certain level of prayer, and the question would come, "Do you trust me?" Yes, it would leave. After several days of coming to this same juncture in this same moment and giving the same answer and getting the same results, it starts to dawn on you that, hey, something's got to give. The question is not going away. So the problem's got to be in the answer. And it made me stop. And here I've been in church my whole life. I've been a missionary for years. I'd like to say that I'm sold out to the cause, that I'm in this 100%. But I had to go back and start all over and take item by item of my life and put it back on the altar and say, okay, I think I trust you with this, but just in case I don't, let me do this again. And I went step by step, and and when I started doing that, I realized that there were a couple of things in life that I had thought I'd put in the hands of the Lord. But over the years, I'd kind of taken them back a little bit and, take it for granted. And once I got to that place where I could really say, Lord, I really trust you. This makes no sense to me. It's not practical. I was very concerned for my son. Cameron was coming up to his senior year of high school. It's a very difficult moment at best. He's going to be looking to further his education in the United States. I'm uprooting him from everything he knows. I'm taking him to a very violent environment where El Salvador is beautiful, but I don't think anybody ever says that it's fun. That it was a very tense environment. My wife, her entire ministry, her identity was Argentina. We loved it, and now we're going to go start all over in a country that really, in the beginning I was like, they don't even need us. I mean, this is a nationalized country. This is a large work. They don't need us. I realized once I got there that they did. They did need us and what we could offer. But at the time of dealing with this and the uncertainty, and like I said, the 3 months of not really knowing where we were going, that was extremely difficult. Oh. And I look back today, and my son's a licensed minister, and my wife still loves me. We're still in ministry. And you say, okay, that it worked out. But in the moment, it was not a practical. And I think it comes to the place you either trust him or you don't.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
You know, you sometimes what he asks us to do doesn't make sense. Yeah. You mentioned Philip, leaving a red hot revival to go ride in a chariot with a foreigner.
One soul.
It doesn't make sense. That there's no practical application for that if you want to look at it that way. But yet it makes all the sense in the world when you see it from God's perspective. And you just have to trust him. And I try to do that every day. I like to say that I've got it down, but every day's a new challenge.
Yeah. So we've covered this transition for a while, and Dad was leading into the next transition of your ministry. So I know we've paused here a lot, but I knew that in that answer, people would be able, while we're not preaching as preachers, people who listen to this, leaders or ministers or just saints in our church or in any church, they're going to be able to apply that principle to their life. And so I wasn't trying to kill the conversation, but I know there was principles that you just mentioned in passing that people can draw from, because sometimes what God asks us to go to doesn't look like what we want to go to, but what God does to us in that season gets us where he wants us.
Exactly.
And through that process, that opportunity that he led us to begins to flourish and is something that the next person will want to go to, even though it's not something we wanted to go to. All right, Dad, transition us
I
back.
think it is intriguing to piggyback one more little paragraph. I think it's intriguing when people see us where we are today. And when maybe some younger missionary or someone who's feeling drawn into similar callings, they look at someone that's in the position you are with 35 years of experience in multiple fields and a very successful career. They see who you are today, not understanding the sacrifice, nor the pain, nor the personal high cost. You had risen to the top in Argentina. Then you felt the release to leave. And then in this seasons of uncertainty, God puts you somewhere and gives you this moment of success. And then he says, that's all you were going to do here. Let's get up and move on. And he picks you up, and now we land in Spain. Mm-hmm. And I think your ministry there is very different, because again, you're leading an established church and working within an established governing body in that district, in that country. And so tell us about Madrid and what that means to you, where you are today, and maybe even what your dreams are.
Madrid is the coolest city I've ever lived in, and it's an incredible, beautiful city. When I first visited, we drove through the streets, and I kept saying, "This is just like Buenos Aires. This is just like Buenos Aires." And finally, my friend corrected me, and he said, "No, Buenos Aires is like Madrid. This city was here first," and he's right. Buenos Aires, a lot of the architecture and everything in Buenos Aires that you see today is a copy of Madrid. And a lot of it, and it's incredible. Even street names, and we love the city. It's an incredible city. We love the church. The Lord put us at this season in our life. I never dreamed that I would ever end up in Europe. That was never on my bucket list as a missionary, that I would ever work in Europe. And but when the door opened, the opportunity was given, we prayed about it, knew without a question that it was the will of the Lord, and the Lord has proven that over and over again. I know today that I'm in the perfect will of the Lord, and it's not been always all easy. Every field has its challenges, and the challenges that we face in Madrid are not or in Spain are not the same challenges that we faced in El Salvador. And so same enemy, just different devils. You know, you're fighting a different kind of battle. But God is blessing. We're having revival, and we love it. We love the city and the country, and y'all have to visit someday.
So the church that you pastor now, I believe it's the largest church in that country.
It's the largest UPC church, yes, sir.
Largest United Pentecostal church,
and it's one of the largest in Europe. It's a good church.
Daughter works, outreaches.
I couldn't really tell you how many churches have come out of Life Tabernacle through the years. Obviously, I've been there going on 8 years now. But in the last 8, under my pastorate, we've started 9 daughter churches.
Wow!
So most of them in the greater Madrid area.
And these are men that you allowed to grow and mature, and then you launched.
I've allowed them to grow, and I've pushed them to grow. Yes, sir.
So along with you pouring Little Miracle Grow on them, there was also a swift kick in the backside to nudge them along.
I can do that. There's part of that, yes, sir.
So, Life Tabernacle is a regional church. It's not just a church on a block in the inner city. It's a church with impact.
Life Tabernacle is a unique church that has been the focus of prophecy since the church began. That it was a birthing ground for ministry, and it's phenomenal. That I've not seen. I've not been associated with a church like it. That it's just, in fact, today there's 28 licensed ministers in the church.
Wow!
And they're all different levels of growth, and that's my passion. That's why God put me there, and you know, as a leader, it's like every Sunday's different. I'm hugging one of them and telling him, "You can do this," and get up and get back in the saddle. You can do this, and then I turn around from him, and I have to go over there and kick that one in the backside and get up and start doing something. And then you go from encouraging to rebuking to discipline. Every Sunday you're running there's so many of them. You're doing a little bit of all of it just about every Sunday.
So in a local church, it would be virtually impossible for 28 credentialed ministers to have the opportunity to, even with 9 daughter works, okay, there's 10 churches going. Mm-hmm. So you've got 28 men, 10 churches. Of course, some of those churches have pastors. How it would be virtually impossible for everyone to get pulpit time or microphone time. So obviously you need to move some of them into the harvest.
They know that they're not going to get pulpit time. Most of them, we allow them to lead a service every once in a while. Only a select few are preach in the church. We allow them to preach out. They preach youth services, men's services, and those kind of events. But their biggest ministry, if they're going to grow a ministry, they're going to do it in cell groups, and that's where.
This is what we would call small groups here.
Small groups, yeah. Yes, sir. Well, we actually call them life groups.
I see. Yeah,
I use cell groups because
you're dating yourself.
Yeah,
it's an old model, but it still works.
In our life groups, we that's where they grow. That's where ministry grows, and so we encourage them to get. In fact, it's obligated that all licensed ministers are involved in life groups.
And some of those turn into churches. Some of those men will get a burden for another part of the city or even the nation or the country. Okay.
I've probably got 6 right now that if need be they could step up and pastor a church, and they're ready. Some of them we're inaugurating a building, our church, before the end of the year. So he will be leaving. He's been with me for 5 years, I think, and he'll be leaving. And one of my workers is going to go with him and be an assistant to him. So that's already, there's a constant. I've given licensed ministers to other churches.
Constant sending.
Yes, sir. Just to keep it flowing, and the Lord, like I said, it's an incredible. The prophecy is being fulfilled, and it's incredible to watch it. And even my young people and young ministers, there's so much potential there, and I love it. I'm the old man now, and training them, and it's a lot of fun.
You said something a few minutes ago that I wrote down because I know what it means, and a lot of pastors stateside and obviously missionaries are very familiar with this term and the representation behind it. But a lot of leaders and saints in North America don't understand what the term nationalized work means. So basically, in layman's term, that's discipleship, that's growth, that's when a work begins to stand on its own, if I'm not mistaken correctly.
That's when a work starts adulting.
Yes.
And just to put it in simple terms.
Yeah, so talk about it.
Well, it's the goal of every work, just like it's the goal of every father. You want your child, you don't expect your babies to be adults today, but that's always in the mind. And so you're training them today to be adults tomorrow. And there comes a time when that has to happen. When you're 15 and living at home, that's not a problem. When you're 35 living at home, that's a problem.
That is a problem.
And so there comes a transition time, and that happens to a national work also. We go in, they're babies, we train them. Start Bible school programs, start growth programs, planning churches. A lot of times the missionary in the early years, he's doing everything, and everything. And getting the work off the ground, getting it going. We focus a lot on training because obviously that's where your growth comes from. And so as the work begins to mature and grow, then the missionary's role changes. And when you get to that point where the work is ready, which, it's like your kid. You see that in some areas he's mature, in other areas he needs to grow up. They're never ready. Mm-hmm. But they come to that point where you say, okay, it's time for this next step. That's nationalization. They become they're in charge of their own growth, their own finances, their own administration, their own systems, everything. And hopefully you've put the structure in there and the doctrine and the administration and all of that has been put in there to where they'll continue to grow. And that's when a work is become nationalized. They form part of the global council. In other words, they become in a sense a sister organization to the North American church.
So then, when we use the term nationalization and you're using the concepts of a child that's entering into adulthood, basically when you nationalize, you actually create a governing body, a self-governing body with self-governing documents, mm-hmm. to where heretofore, a missionary has basically led this group, but by appointment and by position. Mm-hmm. But then when you nationalize, they now have a constitution, they have governing, and then they elect this next leader.
Right.
And it may well be that missionary, or it may be another leader who has proven themselves that they find respect
Correct.
and trust.
Correct. They are self-supporting, they're self-propagating, they're self-governing. They elect their officials, and whom they elect, how they do that is up to them. And there are a lot of nationalized work that have missionaries. And for example, Spain is a nationalized work, and their president is Brother Herod, and I'm also on the national board as elected superintendent. So they have elected us. We were not appointed to those positions, and we'll always, I'll always be a missionary there, but whether I serve as a superintendent or not, that's up to the brethren.
That depends on who's happy or who's mad that day.
Nobody's always, never find them all happy. But
That's great. So transition is very important, and I think you've done that very well, and your legacy speaks for itself. And the past few years, we've had Cameron here, or I've said the past 2 years, right? 3 years. 2020 is when Cameron came here, and we see Ken Burgess and Cameron every day, and in leadership and talent, and you've not only done that in your son, but you've done that in others. And not only are you my uncle, but you're a minister that I've always looked up to, and so we're glad that you're on the Hope for the Soul podcast today. And I don't have anything else to add. I'm sure
I would like to say, maybe get this on camera, that our relationship is very unique. We're friends, we're brother-in-laws, but I don't mind. I have no problem at all letting you know here one-on-one that I respect what you've done in these years. And to watch you in, South America, Central America, and now a Europe location, to see that and to see how God has used and continued to add more bricks in your life, and you build and you've grown, and who knows what the next step is. I mean, you may be elected to the council of heaven one day, but
I hope to be there with a voice and a vote.
But I'd like to know. I know I haven't been to Spain yet. I think that's probably, we had to cancel a trip. I think that's going to unfold here in the not too distant future. But having been to the other places that you've served with you, and then watched the respect and some of the conflict, but then the respect that came from out of all of that, I want to compliment you and let you know that if my being proud of you is important, then I am proud, but I respect and I'm thankful for the anointing and giftings that have been through your life. And then you allowed us Cameron. Cameron came here, and he's been here for almost 2 years, and he's been a joy as well. But you'd send Cameron pretty often home to see us, because he came home for youth camps a number of times over the years and would spend time here. And so we love Cameron, and we love what's going on in his life. And glad that now when COVID came and you were stuck in our house for like 6 months.
COVID came to Ken and didn't leave.
Yeah.
I didn't have the COVID, but I had the Burgess thing going on.
Uh-huh.
And it was like quarantine.
So now you're going to complain about it?
No. I'm just rejoicing. And in that time, the house that we had, you may remember this, we had a living room downstairs. We had a living room upstairs. We gave you upstairs. And I would sit downstairs, and you would sit upstairs, and we would have conversations.
Well, I was content.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your time with us today. And thank you for joining us on Hope for the Soul. Tell somebody about us. Share us. And we'll look forward to our next visit on Hope for the Soul. And